I never thought my peaceful Saturday morning would be interrupted by flashing blue lights and federal agents storming my neighborhood. But that's exactly what happened when HOA Karen made the dumbest mistake of her life. She thought she was calling in a minor complaint, but she ended up triggering a full-blown FBI raid, and the best part, she had no idea what she'd done. It all started earlier that week. My name's Jake, and I own a modest house on the outskirts of a suburban community. The kind of place where people pretend to be friendly but secretly spy on each other from behind their curtains. The HOA. Well, let's just say they ran this place like a dictatorship, and at the center of it all was Karen, the self-proclaimed ruler of the neighborhood. She had a problem with me. More specifically, she had a problem with my garage. See, I worked from home, and I had recently converted my garage into a high-tech workspace for my cybersecurity job. Karen, with her eagle-eyed nosiness, had been watching me like a hawk. She didn't like the way I kept my garage door shut. She didn't like the security cameras I had installed, and she really didn't like that I didn't bow down to her ridiculous HOA rules. "Your garage is an eyesore," she had snapped at me the week before. "And don't think I haven't noticed the suspicious activity happening there. People coming and going at all hours. I think you might be running an illegal operation." I had laughed at the absurdity of it, but I should have known better. Karen didn't ask questions. She jumped to conclusions. And this time, her conclusion would change everything. That Friday, I noticed Karen lurking near my house again, arms crossed, phone in hand. She was up to something, but I ignored her, assuming it was just another one of her passive-aggressive intimidation tactics. I was wrong. At exactly 7:45 a.m. the next morning, I woke up to the sound of screeching tires and sirens. I bolted upright, adrenaline surging through my veins. A quick glance out the window made my stomach drop. FBI agents in tactical gear were surrounding my house. What the hell? I muttered, yanking on a shirt and rushing to the door. The second I stepped outside, I was met with blinding flashlights and drawn weapons. "Hands where we can see them," a voice barked. I immediately complied, my heart pounding. "What's going on?" I demanded. An agent in a navy blue windbreaker with FBI stamped across the back stepped forward. He was a tall, no-nonsense kind of guy, and the look in his eyes told me that whatever was happening was very serious. "We received an anonymous tip that this property is involved in a high-level cybercrime ring," he said coldly. I blinked. Cybercrime. Me. It didn't take long for me to put the pieces together. Karen must have reported me, spinning some ridiculous lie about my garage setup. She had no idea that my cybersecurity job was actually government contracted. I worked directly with law enforcement on digital security threats. Karen had just falsely accused a federal consultant of cybercrime. The irony. I was one of the people who helped the FBI track down criminals. But the story didn't end there. While I was trying to explain the situation, something else happened. Something that took this from a simple misunderstanding to an all-out raid. One of the agents received an update through his earpiece. His expression turned to stone. "Sir," he said, turning to his superior, "we just received confirmation. A flagged cyber attack was traced to this address last night." My blood ran cold. I had done nothing wrong. But somehow, someway, someone had used my internet connection to commit a cybercrime. The FBI wasn't here on a wild goose chase. There was a real threat, and I had a sinking feeling I knew exactly who was responsible. Karen's stupid mistake had just escalated into a full-scale federal investigation. But the worst was yet to come, because the FBI wasn't leaving empty-handed. They were about to raid Karen's house next. Karen thought she was the queen of the neighborhood. She thought she was untouchable, but she had no idea that her stupid mistake wasn't just an inconvenience for me. It had officially put her on the FBI's radar. And now, they were heading straight for her house. I stood on my front lawn, arms crossed, trying not to laugh as the FBI agents regrouped. They were dead serious, speaking in hushed but urgent tones as they scanned the area. "Sir," one of them turned back to me, the same agent who had confronted me earlier. "You said you're a cybersecurity contractor, correct?" "Yes," I nodded. "And I can guarantee I didn't commit any cybercrimes." The agent exhaled sharply. "We don't believe you did. But here's where it gets interesting. Who else has access to your network?" I felt the realization hit me like a ton of bricks. Karen. Karen had been harassing me about my security cameras for months. She had demanded access to inspect them, claiming they were violating HOA guidelines. I never gave her permission, but knowing her, she didn't need permission. She must have used one of her HOA goons, probably that guy Greg, the self-appointed neighborhood handyman, to tap into my network. It was illegal, it was stupid, and now it was FBI-level stupid. "I think I know where you should look next," I said, a slow smirk creeping onto my face. The next 10 minutes were pure poetic justice. The same FBI agents that had raided my property were now marching up the perfectly landscaped driveway of Karen's house. She was outside watering her pristine flower bed, completely oblivious. That changed fast. The moment she noticed the agents, her entire demeanor snapped from calm to furious confusion. "Excuse me," she shrieked, setting down her watering can. "What is going on here?" An agent stepped forward, flashing a badge. "Ma'am," he said firmly, "we have reason to believe an unauthorized cyber intrusion originated from your property." Karen's smug face froze. "What?" she gasped. "That's impossible. I'm a law-abiding citizen. I'm on the HOA board." I nearly burst out laughing. The FBI did not care about her HOA status. Karen, of course, wasn't used to people ignoring her authority. She folded her arms, attempting her usual intimidation tactics. "This is a mistake," she huffed. "There is no way my house is involved in any of this." "Maybe you should be looking at him." She spun and pointed directly at me. The lead agent didn't even blink. "We already did, ma'am," he said flatly. "And now we're looking at you." For the first time, Karen looked nervous. She opened her mouth to protest, but the agents were already moving past her, pushing through her front door. That's when all hell broke loose. Karen ran after the agents, yelling in outrage. "You can't just barge into my house," she shrieked. One of the agents held up a warrant. "We have probable cause," he said coolly, "and you're going to want to cooperate." I casually leaned against a lamppost, watching the chaos unfold, but I wasn't prepared for what happened next. From inside the house, an agent's voice shouted out, "We've got something." My smirk vanished. The FBI wasn't just here because of my internet being hacked. They had just found something much worse. Karen's expression drained of color. "What? What do you mean?" she stammered, backing away from the front door. The agents didn't answer. One of them emerged holding a laptop. It wasn't just any laptop. It was a government-issued device, a device that Karen should not have. My stomach dropped, because in that moment, I knew Karen had just done something much bigger than a petty HOA dispute. This wasn't just about me. Karen had somehow gotten her hands on classified government property. And now, the FBI wasn't just investigating her house. They were building a case. At this point, every neighbor had stepped outside. People were whispering, phones were out recording, and Karen was losing her mind. "This is insane," she shrieked, flailing her arms. "I am a pillar of this community. I have rights." One of the agents sighed. "Ma'am, we're going to need you to step inside for questioning." That was when Greg, the HOA's resident handyman, came sprinting down the sidewalk. "Karen, what the hell is going on?" he panted, looking terrified. I watched with interest. Greg had been Karen's little sidekick for years. If something shady was happening, he knew about it. And judging by the way his face turned ghost white when he saw the laptop, he was absolutely involved. Karen grabbed onto Greg's arm like a drowning woman reaching for a life raft. "Tell them, Greg," she wailed. "Tell them this is a mistake." Greg opened his mouth, then snapped it shut. Oh, he knew. He knew exactly what was happening. And suddenly, Karen wasn't just in trouble, she was alone. The lead FBI agent turned to Greg. "Sir," he said, dead serious, "do you have anything to say about this?" Greg hesitated. He was sweating. I just fix things," he stammered. Karen's face contorted with rage. "Greg!" She shrieked, but Greg was already backing away. He wasn't going down with her. The agent nodded to his team. "Take them both in for questioning." And just like that, Karen's reign of terror was over. 2 agents grabbed her by the arms as she screeched in protest. "You'll regret this." "I'll sue. I'll have your badges." The door of the black SUV slammed shut, silencing her. I exhaled slowly, watching the vehicle pull away. The neighborhood stood in stunned silence. Karen had called the FBI on me, and now she was the one sitting in the back of a federal vehicle. And the craziest part, the real reason Karen was being taken and hadn't even been revealed yet. Because what the FBI had found inside that laptop, it was about to change everything. Karen thought she had power. She thought she ran this neighborhood. But now, She was in the backseat of an FBI vehicle, screaming like a banshee while the agents turned their attention to what really mattered, the laptop. Because Karen didn't just commit some petty cybercrime. She had accidentally exposed something much bigger, and the FBI was about to uncover it. While Karen's screams faded into the distance, I turned to the lead agent, Ramirez, who was staring at the laptop like it was a ticking bomb. "What exactly did you just find?" I asked. Ramirez didn't answer right away. He turned to his team. "Get this device to forensics. I want a full decryption and audit, now." One of the agents nodded, took the laptop, and headed toward their vehicle. That's when Ramirez finally looked at me, and I saw something I wasn't expecting, genuine concern. He exhaled sharply. "If this is what I think it is," he shook his head. "This just went way beyond an HOA dispute." The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I had been dealing with Karen's nonsense for years. Annoying letters, bogus fines, and constant harassment. But this wasn't just HOA drama anymore. I swallowed hard. "You mind telling me what's going on?" Ramirez hesitated, then finally spoke. "This laptop, it's government property. Not just that, but it's connected to a classified case we've been investigating for months." I blinked. Karen had a classified laptop in her house. Ramirez nodded. "And if what's on that hard drive is what I think it is, Karen might have unknowingly just helped us crack a federal case wide open." I rubbed my temples. Of course Karen would somehow stumble into an actual federal crime. And now, the entire neighborhood was about to get caught in the crossfire. The agents wasted no time. Within an hour, they had set up a mobile command center in my driveway, where my RV used to be. Karen had wanted the FBI out of the neighborhood. Well, now they were here permanently. And they weren't leaving until they found out exactly what Karen had gotten herself into. I watched as forensic techs swarmed over the laptop, their fingers flying across keyboards, scanning files, decrypting drives, and murmuring in hushed tones. Ramirez stood beside them, his arms crossed, watching every move. Then, after what felt like an eternity, one of the techs turned. "Sir," he called out, "you need to see this." I expected Ramirez to step forward. Instead, he turned to me. "You should see this too." I hesitated, but followed him anyway. We gathered around the laptop, the screen glowing ominously in the dim light of the command center, and what I saw, my blood ran cold. Ramirez muttered a curse under his breath as he scanned the files. There, plain as day, were emails, thousands of them, sent from Karen's email address, all to the same contact, an account that was already flagged in the FBI system, one that belonged to a known fraud ring. I let out a slow breath. "Tell me you're joking." "I wish I was," Ramirez muttered. "This account, it's tied to an international fraud operation we've been trying to shut down for over a year." I stared at the screen. "Are you telling me Karen is involved in a federal fraud case?" Ramirez didn't say yes, but he didn't say no either. Instead, he scrolled through the emails, scanning through Karen's infuriatingly formal messages. And I swear, I nearly burst out laughing, because Karen, in her endless arrogance, hadn't realized she was talking to criminals. She had been convinced she was talking to a high-level government official. Karen had been scammed, and in doing so, she had unknowingly helped a federal fraud ring launder thousands of dollars. Oh, my God, Karen had spent years harassing me over meaningless HOA rules. And meanwhile, she had been committing an actual crime. I turned to Ramirez. "What happens now?" Ramirez exhaled slowly. "Now, we bring her in for a real interrogation." And just like that, Karen's nightmare had only just begun. They brought Karen into the field office later that night. I wasn't there. But from what I heard, it was glorious. She sat across from two serious-looking agents, her arms folded, her face twisted in indignation. "You people have made a terrible mistake," she snapped. "I am a pillar of my community." The agents ignored her rant. Instead, one of them slid the laptop across the table. "We found these emails on your computer," he said calmly. "Why don't you walk us through them?" Karen's smugness disappeared instantly. She stared at the screen, her expression shifting from arrogance to confusion to complete panic. "What?" she stammered. "What am I looking at?" The agents exchanged a glance. "You tell us." Karen leaned in, squinting at the messages. "This isn't," she paused, blinking rapidly. "This isn't what I think it is, isn't it?" the agent said, flipping to another email. "Because this message here, it's you, personally confirming the wire transfers on behalf of an international company that doesn't exist. Karen's face turned ghost white. She flipped through the emails desperately, like she could somehow erase them by scrolling faster. She swallowed. This is a misunderstanding. The lead agent leaned forward, folding his hands on the table. Karen, he said, voice calm but deadly serious, you were corresponding with criminals. You helped move stolen funds through fake accounts. Karen opened her mouth. Nothing came out, and then, for the first time in her entire life, Karen was silent. Karen had never backed down from a fight. She had harassed me, the entire neighborhood, and every unfortunate soul who crossed her path. But now she was completely out of her depth, and the best part, she had done it to herself. The FBI had everything they needed: her emails, her bank transactions, her own words confirming her involvement. And the worst part, Karen didn't even know she had been committing a crime. She thought she was helping some high-ranking official clean up the government. Instead, she had been helping criminals launder money, and now she was facing federal charges. But before the FBI was done with her, there was one last surprise waiting for Karen. Because the moment they dug a little deeper into those emails, they found something else. Something that changed everything, and it was about to make things so much worse. Karen was already in deep trouble. She had unwittingly aided an international fraud ring and was now sitting in an FBI interrogation room, struggling to explain why she had personally confirmed wire transfers for an illegal operation. But the problem, the FBI wasn't finished with her. Because when they dug deeper into those emails, they found something even worse. And now Karen wasn't just an unwitting pawn in a fraud scheme. She was the key to exposing a much bigger crime. Inside the FBI's mobile command center, Ramirez was staring at his screen in shock. One of the forensic techs had just decrypted a hidden folder buried inside Karen's laptop. And what was inside? Names, addresses, bank records. This wasn't just a simple fraud operation anymore. Karen had unknowingly stumbled into a full-blown international money laundering scheme. And her laptop, the one she thought she was using to send ridiculous HOA violation notices, had just given the FBI exactly what they needed to blow the case wide open. Ramirez let out a slow breath. "This is bigger than we thought," he muttered. I raised an eyebrow. "How big?" Ramirez turned to me, his face unreadable. "Big enough that we're going to need a full-scale raid." Back at the field office, Karen was still fuming. "I demand to speak to a supervisor." She snapped at the agent questioning her. The agent barely looked up. "You already are." Karen let out an exaggerated gasp, clutching her pearls like she was a victim in all this. "This is outrageous," she screeched. "I was just trying to help my community." The agent slowly slid a printed copy of one of her emails across the table. It was one of Karen's own messages, where she had confirmed a fraudulent wire transfer on behalf of a government official who did not exist. Karen's face turned pale. I was just doing what I thought was right," she stammered. The agent leaned forward, his voice calm but firm. "Karen, let me make this very clear." He tapped the paper. "You didn't just help your community, you moved stolen money. You facilitated fraudulent transactions, and you put an entire federal investigation at risk." Karen swallowed hard. But before she could say anything, the door burst open. Another agent stepped in, his expression urgent. "Sir," he said to the lead investigator, "we've got a problem." Karen let out a nervous laugh. "Oh great, finally, someone realizes how ridiculous all of this is." The agent ignored her completely. Instead, he turned to his superior and said 5 words that changed everything. "They're already making their move." I didn't expect to be standing outside an abandoned warehouse at 2 a.m. watching a full-scale FBI operation unfold, but there I was. It turned out that Karen's laptop hadn't just exposed a fraud ring. It had led the FBI straight to a hidden criminal operation right here in the city, and tonight, the FBI was taking them down. A dozen black SUVs were parked in an alley, red and blue lights flashing silently as heavily armed agents lined up near the entrance. Ramirez was in full tactical gear, barking orders into his radio. "This is it," he muttered. "This is the break we needed." I watched as the agents moved in, sweeping the perimeter before stacking up at the doors. Then, in a coordinated motion, they breached the building. What they found inside confirmed everything. Stacks of fake IDs, credit card skimmers, offshore account details, and evidence of a massive cybercrime operation. Karen, in her blind arrogance, had been working with criminals without even realizing it. And thanks to her stupidity, they were all going down. The FBI rounded up everyone inside. Several key members of the fraud ring were arrested on the spot, and within minutes, the agents had control of the entire building. It was a huge win. Ramirez stepped out of the warehouse, letting out a deep breath. "That," he said, "was one of the easiest busts we've had in months." I let out a laugh. "So you're saying we owe Karen for this?" Ramirez groaned. "Don't say that." But the reality, Karen, in all her stupidity, had just helped bring down an entire criminal network without even knowing it. The next morning, Karen was officially charged, not with major crimes. She was too dumb to be an actual mastermind, but enough to make her panic. She had assisted fraud, tampered with federal property, and obstructed an investigation, which meant she was in serious trouble. And the best part, when they finally let her go, she thought she could go back to normal. But the neighborhood, they never let her forget. During the next HOA meeting, someone printed out copies of her FBI interrogation transcript and left them on every chair. The title: How Karen Accidentally Became a Federal Criminal. Karen stormed out of the meeting in complete humiliation, and after that, she was never the same again. From that point on, Karen's reign of terror ended. She stopped harassing people about their lawns. She avoided the neighbors. And any time she saw me, she crossed the street. She had spent years making my life miserable, but in the end, her own arrogance took her down. And now, the entire neighborhood knew the truth. Karen was a fraud, and the FBI would be watching her forever.